Welcome to World Travel Made Easy with Itinerary Boss, the podcast where we dive deep into insider tips, travel hacks, and the best ways to explore the world smarter. I'm your host, Ross. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or just starting your next getaway, you're in the right place. Before we dive into today's episode, I've got something special for you. Head over to itineraryboss.com to grab your free resource to get you started traveling smarter and quicker. And it's all yours to help you make your next trip unforgettable. Don't also forget to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube so you never miss an episode. We've got new travel tips, interviews, and destination inspiration coming your way every Wednesday. And if you enjoy the show, don't forget to share it with a friend and give us a rating and review to help more people travel. Also, make sure to subscribe to the Itinerary Insider at itineraryboss.com, where you'll get all the latest episode releases, blog posts, as well as exclusive credit card sign-up bonuses, my travel must-haves, and travel hacks delivered straight to your inbox. Let's get you traveling smarter. And now, on to the show. Welcome back to another episode of World Travel Made Easy with Itinerary Boss. I'm excited to have on Margie Piliere, and I got connected with her through one of our former guests and a close friend, Lorene Burton. She's actually her aunt, and after they met and she told her about what we were talking about, she said, "You got to connect with my aunt because she's been in the travel industry for many years." So we got to connecting, and she can bring a ton of value to this episode just through travel insurance, budgeting, problem solving, anything. And I don't want to sell her short, so wanted to bring her on. Hey, Margie, how are you?
Hi, it's good to see you. And thanks for having me on.
Of
Really
course.
excited to be here and to talk about travel. It's such a passion of mine. So,
Yeah, of course. And obviously, through our couple introduction calls we had, I already learned a ton from you and excited for others to learn. But I know I gave a high level overview, but would just love to hear more about, what you currently do and the impact you make in the travel industry.
well, sure. Well, first I'll just take a step back and talk a little bit about how long I've been in the industry and why I'm in the industry. You know, I had another career and for many years, but I loved travel and travel is expensive. And I quickly figured out that being a travel agent would be a great way to pay for myself and my husband to travel too. So about 12 years ago, I opened up Earthbound Travel Services and uh, I've been booking travel ever since through word of mouth, and it's grown over the years. And now I'm semi-retired from my other work and spend a lot more time on travel and putting together groups. And the industry has changed so much over the years. There are a lot of um, issues you have to deal with now that you didn't have to deal with before. So I think travel agents are more relevant than ever. And so I'm, really happy to, provide those services and help people not get into issues that other people have gotten into in the past. So, really that's my background. I do a lot of Italy and Greece travel. That's my ancestry too. I've spent a lot of time in both countries. So I know a lot about it and I know what to do and where to go. So, but I provide travel services for everywhere in the world, and a lot of it is just research and saving you that time and money and letting me take that on, and then also providing some services that I don't think people really know travel agents do, and how wonderful it is to have a travel agent. We can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, and that's, I think we connected right off the bat, just by going over to Europe, right? Figuring out ways to save money on travel. I think it's awesome. I remember, Lorene was telling me, yeah, my Aunt Margie's always somewhere and it seems like she's on this luxurious vacation and somehow it's paid for. And it's
Yeah.
always trying to figure out, right, how, and for me, we do a lot of, points and miles, credit card hacking, that type of stuff, but also figuring out, I mean, like you said, taking the time to do the research plan, make sure you have all the checklists, you know,
Hmm.
things that you accumulate over a number of years, that sometimes you miss on those first couple trips. So the importance of having someone with a background like you and knowledge is very imperative. So I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I know when we were talking before, we were talking about Greece, which we just got back from in September, and then we were talking about Italy, which I know Lorene's actually going on her honeymoon there, so she'll definitely have
Yeah.
to tips and tricks for
She's
sure.
she's pretty confident and she's very detail oriented, so I'm sure she'll be fine, but it's always nice to have somebody to bounce things off of.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I would love to dive into Greece and Italy because I feel like those are two hot destinations right now. I feel like after COVID, a lot of people were, bundled up, didn't get to travel a lot. And then I think now social media, there's a pro and a con with it, right? Everyone now knows like this is where to go, but then some of those places get just over commercialized. I think we saw that in Santorini when we were there. It was a must go to, but right, like I don't think we would go back just because it just felt very touristy. But it would just be great to hear from you, right? Why are those two places special? And then what would you say first time visitors should prioritize when visiting both those countries?
Yeah, well, you're right. The world has opened up the floodgates for travel since the pandemic, and last year was just a crazy year. There were so many people traveling, and the interesting thing to note is there was no on and off season uh, this past year. People were traveling all year round. I was there, several times throughout the year, and the crowds were, just there all the time. So trying to avoid the summer used to be the way to go if you didn't want to have the crowds. But now I think the shoulder months are just as busy, and the the natives are getting very, very upset about that. So you're going to come across some, disgruntled locals, and you're going to come across, you know, uh, um, restrictions like Venice, where they're, charging now to get onto Venice Island, and they're trying to, they've cut out the cruise ship industry from Venice. You have to now go out of Trieste, which is 2 hours away. So there's a lot going on here in both countries, but they're beautiful. They're beautiful countries, and that's why people want to go there. And everybody has a different idea about what they want to see, which is why when I work with someone, I really get to the bottom of that. What do you really want to see, and what do you want to do? Are you going there to see the main cities? Rome, Florence, Venice, Athens, or are you, somebody who wants to go just plop yourself on a beach in the Amalfi Coast and just lay out in the sun in the sand, or do you want to do a little bit of both? So that's something you have to think about. I think in Italy the most important things to see is, I feel you do the basic things first, and then you find out what you like and you go back for more. So I always say people should see Rome, Florence, and Venice, and should really try to get down to the Amalfi Coast. But when you've seen that and done that, there are some really great places to go, like the Cinque Terre. Sicily is beautiful. It's awesome. Going into Calabria, even getting into the middle of Italy, into the mountain regions there, it's very pretty. Going to the east coast of Italy, which a lot of people are not going to, Bari and Brindisi. In Greece, you have Mykonos, Santorini, and Crete that a lot of people go to. But there's the island of Rhodes is really great. There's the island of Napoleon. There's Corfu. There are a lot of really great places to go that are a little off the beaten track. I mean, we were just on an island called Igoumenitsa, and we went to this little town in on Igoumenitsa, and it was just beautiful. And there weren't as many crowds there, I have to say, and it was just as spectacular and just as pretty as Santorini. So I would say, talk to a travel agent, find out what your passion is, and they know where to go to find that passion.
Yeah, no, so well said. And I think
Mhm.
it's, the timing is good because last week I just had an episode that I launched for a couple who did their wedding in Lake Garda and they absolutely loved it, but they were talking about, most people afterwards, I worked with them to help create just extended itineraries for their guests just to say, hey, if you're going to these places, if
Mhm.
you're going to the south, maybe go here. If you're going to the north, maybe go here. Here's some places to stay. Here's some things to do. But
Mhm.
they were like, we did our honeymoon in a just different place, and we wanted to do that to get away from the crowds. And
Mhm.
they've been a few times. So I think it's understanding that. And sometimes those are the best times. Like when we just went to Greece, we did Santorini, we did Mykonos, which were great. A little more crowded. We did mid to late September, so it wasn't as bad. And you still
Mhm.
had like a lot of the restaurants, beach clubs open, which was good. But our favorite island was Milos, and that's becoming more popular.
Mhm.
But we heard from a lot of people the islands you mentioned, and like we already want to go back, and like I think
Mhm.
going to those islands is going to
Mhm.
be key because a lot of the times that's where you get the authentic food, just being able to find those hidden gems, talk with the locals. So yeah,
Mhm.
you said it best, and I think just thinking about too on the front end, what do you like to do? Not Rome, Florence, Venice may not be for everyone. Like you said,
Mhm.
people may want to just plop down on the Amalfi Coast. What vacations have you been on? If you don't like being packed, shoulder to shoulder in the summer with people and it's scorching hot, like maybe not going to those big cities, but it is good to start because sometimes that's how you find out if you haven't traveled. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is the type of vacation. So sitting down, asking yourselves those questions. And yeah, I
Mhm.
know we were talking like when I launched the digital course I have, that's one of the first modules is stepping back and like writing down 10 different things that are going to walk you through. Okay, this is how you actually like figure out what you want to do for your
Mhm.
vacation and where you want to go. So yeah,
And
no, that's
yeah, I think that it used to be people went on vacation and they, took a tour, like a Perillo tour or a talk tour, and they're great. I mean, for if that's what you like and you want to just turn off and let somebody else do it for you, that's great. That's the way to go. But I found that after the pandemic, a lot of people wanted to do different things. They didn't want to do the bus tours. They wanted to go somewhere and immerse themselves. So I've got, clients that want to go to Sardinia, which is a beautiful island, Corsica, another beautiful island. They want to go, to the wine country in Sicily. They don't want to, Taormina is beautiful and, really a must see. But, there's Catania, there's the Cyclops Riviera, there's the vineyards in the southern part of Italy. There's a lot to see and do off the beaten track. And I found that people over the past 2 years, that's what they wanted to do. They really, they haven't wanted to do the Rome, Florence, Venice thing. They want to go to an island and go ride ATVs all over the place and, do fun stuff like that. And I mean, these are, younger people and older people.
yeah.
I had people in their 50s that were like, did an ATV ride on Mount Etna. I mean, they were covered in black soot from the lava rocks. They
Yeah.
had been like bumped around and they're doing four-wheel drives. And like, so people just wanted to really do like off the beaten track things. And they're fun things to do. I think a lot of people would like to do that.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I think over the years, that's what I've started to like to do more. I've done a lot of the big cities now. It's like if I'm going over there for a couple weeks, I want to just kind of unplug, be with the people I want to be with, and just enjoy the culture and
Yeah.
relax and do things that you're not going to do when
Mhm.
you're in the States.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. That was what this year was all about, both for myself and for my clients. It was a
Yeah.
lot of that. So,
Awesome.
yeah. So,
Well, I think you talk about I love that you were like you transitioned into being a travel agent because you're like, okay, I love traveling. How do I have this pay for me to do it also? So just
mhm,
would love to hear more about some of your strategies for budgeting, saving clients money, saving yourself money, any
mhm,
other, tips and tricks while planning a
mhm.
trip abroad.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things to think about, and it's not cheap to go to Europe right now, and you may be able to find a good deal on a flight every once in a while, but honestly, the flights are more expensive than they've ever been. The hotels, the prices have gone up a lot, though I've seen them come down a little bit lately. like the past 6 months, I've seen them start to come back down and get a little bit more reasonable. But you don't have to stay in a five-star hotel to have a great experience. So you can find them. You can do Airbnb. I would just warn everybody, if you're doing Airbnb and you've got a lot of luggage, you might want to think about packing light, because a lot of the Airbnbs are going to be on second, third, fourth, fifth, and even sixth floors, and they usually don't have elevators. Some of the places, I had a couple that went, was in southern Italy in near Positana, and there were like 30 steps up to the Airbnb before you even got to the door to go up the steps to your unit. So you have to really think about that kind of thing. So pack light, and Airbnbs can save you a lot of money. Um, just be careful of the hidden fees. So what it looks like when you first click on it and what it looks like when you get to the end of it can be different. And Airbnbs can be a little touch and go in Europe in general. They have a different idea of what you really need to have in an Airbnb. So you want to make sure you pay attention to the amenities that they offer and make sure they have everything you want.
Yes.
So that's a great way to save a little money. Rail is a great way to save money. You don't need to rent a car for a lot of these places. You can get around by rail. Rail is very inexpensive. You can do that. You can also, in Greece, you can use ferries. The ferries are pretty cheap. They have the fast ones. They're a little more expensive, but if you don't mind a little more of a leisurely ride, then go for the slower one. It's a little cheaper, save you a lot of money there. There are all kinds of tricks of the trade to make your budget a little more affordable. Tours, I would say you can do a lot of things on your own. So really deep dive on what you need to hire a tour guide for and what you don't need to hire a tour guide for. So, and sometimes, you can plan everything to the minute. And I do that for a lot of clients. I plan everything minute to minute to minute. Make sure to give yourself some time to just wander around and maybe you don't need to see everything the first time you go there. Maybe some things aren't of interest to you. And so I say, think about the things that are really important that you need to see, that you need a tour. Like, for instance, if you're going to go to the Colosseum in Rome, I do a skip the line access ticket. You can buy them online and, make sure you do that. Save yourself 3 hours standing in line. Same thing goes with, the Vatican. You do need a guide, I think, for the Vatican, but otherwise you can walk around. You can see the Trevi Fountain, the Pantheon. They're charging for now, but it's cheap. You just have to stand in line for the tickets. But there's a lot around Rome. I like to just get lost in Rome and wander around. We found under the Piazza Navona, where the Piazza Navona used to be a stadium, a sports stadium in ancient times, and underneath they found the stadium underneath the Piazza Navona, and you can go, and there's a little museum there, and you just go down there, and for a couple bucks you can go into the museum and see that. So there's a lot of like little hidden gems where you can save a lot of money. So those are the kinds of things that I try to help with. I generally ask my clients, what's your budget? Come up with a budget. How much can you spend? And then I kind of go from there. I can tailor the trip to the budget.
Yeah.
And there are, like I said, there are a lot of nice three-star hotels that you can, that are in great locations. I'm a big fan of location, location, location.
Yes.
I'd spring a little more money for location. Don't park yourself 20 minutes outside of town where you have to keep either
Yep.
walking in or taking a subway to get in every day, and you're just wasting time doing that.
Yeah. No,
So
100%. I agree with
yeah,
everything. I think we were
yeah,
laughing beforehand just around the Airbnbs because over the years, like that's most of the times where I've stayed just planning, bigger group trips over to Europe when we were in our 20s for a bunch of guys. You had to find hotels were going to be tough. So having everyone an Airbnb, but I can remember very clearly from Madrid where we stayed on the sixth floor. Amazing rooftop view, but having to lug, and this was, we were mid to late 20s and we hadn't been we still were checking bags where we were like, okay, we have all this luggage, but I can remember that just carrying those up, going down in the heat of the summer, it then happening when we were in Portugal last year in Lisbon, no elevator. This year when we were in Athens, luckily there was elevators, so we put our luggage in, shot it up, and we were good. But we only, I mean, now we only bring carry-ons just because we know, and also just traveling, it makes it a lot easier. And yeah, those free walking tours are and just free, just walking around in general. And a lot of the cities, a lot of the times you can see most of the stuff that you want to, other than a few of the, big places. But yeah, getting that skip the line tour, paying, 20, 30, whatever it is for that, it's going to save you time, headache, and then you're going to take away that stress. Because a lot of times you see people who are waiting that 3 hour line, like pissed off or upset. And it's like, well, we like to say you should have planned better because
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because like it's not the people's fault here. You just didn't look it up prior to going. So those are just things that you should know. And yeah, I mean, taking the ferries in Greece, we took the Seajet high speed ferries. Those were great. I mean, they were affordable. They were pretty comfortable, and they got you there. I mean, I think the longest one we took was from Milos to Athens, which was 3 to 3.5 hours. But between everywhere, 2 hours. And it wasn't too bad. So yeah, I mean, you bring up a ton of great points, and it just goes back to right what you said. What's your budget? What do you want to spend your money on? It's just really sitting down prior to even going somewhere and like mapping all of this out. It's just like going back to the basic questions, 5 to 10 questions of those things. So then you can say, okay, this is the type of vacation I want to have. And you don't need to stay in those 5 star resorts. I think that's where everyone has a misconception of travel is, oh, I got to stay in the one that's on Instagram or in a movie. And it's like you can probably find something that's nicer, more affordable, and stay there for less of a cost. And being central is very key because staying outside, like you said, training in, Ubering, that's a hassle. And you want to be able to save that time and maximize it. And then being able to just walk around freely is huge. And yeah,
Mhm.
one trick we use is like, for example, on our honeymoon, we're staying in one of the Hyatts, it's a pretty rare Hyatt when we're in Bali, just off points and miles, just through our Chase Ultimate
Mhm.
Rewards card
Mm,
because it's
great
transferred
point.
directly to Hyatt, and we were able to stay there, and we racked up enough points to fly there and back on business on Qatar. That was something that we really wanted to do. So, like, if you want to save money, it's just figuring out ways. How do you maximize points? Are there things that like we spend most of our money on travel? So we have the Chase Sapphire Reserve and Chase Sapphire Preferred, two good cards that get you those benefits. But are there things that you spend a lot of money on? If you're spending a lot of money on groceries, maybe it's the Amex Gold. So there's a lot of different ways that
Mhm.
you can strategically do those to then figuring out how to transfer points. And that's where I'm excited to help a lot of people understand how to do that, and show
Mhm.
there's a lot of different affordable ways to travel. It's just again, you got to go back to you got to plan better
Yeah,
and
exactly. Well, I
do
think
your
you're right
research.
about the points. You're right
Yeah.
about the points. And, I always tell my clients, find out, okay, what's the airport near you?
Mhm.
Who's in that hub? And
Yes.
pick that airline and be loyal to them. And, for me, yeah, I'm near Newark Airport, and Newark Airport is a United hub.
Mm.
I fly United all the time. I get a lot of stuff from them. I get free upgrades all the time. I get free economy plus seats. I get free luggage. I don't ever, I rarely pay for to check a piece of luggage. Usually I carry on anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't really check luggage anyway. Save yourself some money that way.
Yeah.
And I think if you're loyal to them, you get a lot of points. And I've gotten free business class tickets.
Yeah.
I've shown up in the airport in Munich or Berlin, and when I traveled a lot for work, and they'd come over and say, we just upgraded you to business class."
Yeah.
So you those are really nice perks.
Yes.
They really are, and especially when you're tired and you've been traveling around and you're coming home and they're like, "Oh, by the way, you've got a flatbed seat now."
Yes.
Thank
And
you. Thank you very much
and
for that.
right.
Yeah, points are great. The Amex cards, they're the ones that charge annual fees. I'm a little wary of them. It depends
Mhm.
on what the annual fee is. Is it going to be worth it? Are you going to use it enough to make that money back? So just make sure you're aware of that. But there are some people that swear by that, and they get a lot of perks through those
Yeah.
cards.
Yeah. And it just depends too, like you said. It's like thinking about, okay, where is your hub? If you're in Newark, United, and United's part of the Star Alliance, it has so many different transfer partners that you then can
Mhm,
transfer different points. So just understanding, if you do have any sort of Amex cards, right, where do those transfer to? Some like Delta and having those. So I think it's just understanding that, and that we could go down a rabbit hole, and that could be
oh
more.
yeah, that could be a whole other subject.
Oh yeah, and I have plenty of that coming down the pipeline, and with some other
Yeah, yeah.
solely who niche down and focus on that. But yeah, there's so many different ways, but I think it just goes back to just sitting down, mapping it out, understanding how are you going to pay for this, what do you want to get out of it,
Mhm,
what's your budget, and
mhm,
how long do you have? I think those are four questions, and don't. I had a former guest who I've traveled with a bunch, and he's like, when I book it, I break it down, and this is what I do, but it's like don't think you have to book the whole trip and plan it all at once. Book the
mhm,
flight to get there, then you're going. And then
mhm,
as time goes longer, okay, we're here. We want to go to these places. Then
mhm.
start with the hotels. How are you getting around there? And then start to tee in on where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And all of that.
Right. That's kind of the process I follow when I plan for clients. I start with okay, where do you want to go? And I do the bones. The bones are the air and then the hotel. You fill in the hotels. Then we work over time because usually, people come to me usually 6 months, 8 months prior to when they want to go somewhere. So it's too soon to book a lot of things at that point. The airfare and the hotel you want to get lined up. Then everything else I kind of branch out from there and say, okay, you're in this place. How do you want to get from here to here? What do you want to do when you're here? These are the things that are in the area that you can do, So, if you're going to Florence, do you want to go to the Cinque Terre for a couple days? I have a client that's doing that. Some people want to go to Siena for a couple days or Bologna for a few days. So, you try to build out from there and then get them from A to B.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's a great way to start planning is just the way that you said. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I would love to kind of transition into because when we were talking, I mean, you really give a white glove service to your clients. You're kind of there every step of the way, right? From understanding, doing that discovery to planning it all out to then being there for when they're there. And it's not just planning the trip, right? It's making sure they're set up for success. If anything wrong goes wrong over there when they're, on their trip. So I would love to just hear a little bit more from you, right? When
Mhm.
things don't go as planned, how are you
Mhm.
helping your clients through? And are there any like specific recent stories that have happened that people should people should
Uh,
be aware of?
it's funny. It's been a year of that, I have to say. I think it's because everybody's back from the pandemic, and we were just talking about, plan. You might get sick. You might get a cold. You may get COVID. You may get something. People are, running around, in crowds. Chances are you're going to catch something. So, there's a couple things. First, taking a step back is the planning is so important, like we said, because that will alleviate a lot of problems, the planning itself. So if you have everything planned just the way you want to do it, you will avoid a lot of issues down the road. But once you're there, things happen. Best plans go south. Let me
Hmm.
tell you, and they can go south quickly. And so you want to buffer things a little bit. You want to think about travel insurance. Everybody, looks at that cost and like, I don't want to pay that money. But it can save you a lot of money down the road. I mean, people, if you get sick and you end up in the emergency room, for instance, my husband just ended up in the emergency room in Barcelona in July. And that was it wasn't too expensive. It was about $400, but travel, your insurance, your medical insurance at home likely will not cover those expenses. And he was lucky. It was just a quick trip in and out. But some people, they get so sick they have to get medevac. So if you're on a cruise ship and they have to take you off the cruise ship and take you to a hospital, they medevac you in usually they take you by boat off, and then they put you in a helicopter and take you to a hospital. That could be upwards of $150,000. So you really want to make sure you cover yourself for those contingencies. You will have to pay those costs up front, but if you have travel insurance, they'll reimburse you for them. I recommend at least $100,000 in medevac insurance. They at least $10,000 in sickness insurance in case you end up in the emergency room. Think about like what country you're in and what circumstance the city that you're in. And sometimes it's better not to go to the hospital. Sometimes a lot of times I say go to your hotel desk, because they'll either call a doctor in for you and bring them to your room. It can save you a lot of money and time and hassle. Or if they feel that you really need to go to the hospital, they'll call the ambulance for you, or they'll put you in the taxi and they'll send you to the right place. They'll send you to the right hospital in the right place. So don't be afraid to use the hotel clerks to help you with that type of thing. So planning, like for instance, just yesterday I had clients. They're in Italy. They started in Bari. They rented a car. They drove up the east coast of Italy, and they were on their way to Venice. They stopped at two hotels along the way and hung out at the beach and all of that. And they got to Rimini, and the husband got very sick. Very, very bad chest cold, couldn't breathe, was having trouble breathing. They had to take him to the emergency room. And here's where I come in. She texts me, there's a problem. I unwinded I unwind everything. So she's there dealing with her husband in the emergency room. She doesn't have to think about, Emma, how can I get 2 additional nights at the hotel here because we're going to be here for a little while? Do I have to change my flight? I had to cancel their hotel in Venice. Thank God they had free cancellation. They had a small penalty, but not as big as they could have had. So I mean, these are the things you have to think about. How are you going to unwind it? I'm a big fan of when you book hotels, book free cancellation rates, pay the extra money for them, because you'll get the money back. What little you don't get back, you can go to travel insurance and get that reimbursed too. He went to an emergency room. He had to buy medications. He had to stay at a hotel extra nights. I had to book them a hotel in Venice at the airport so that they can go there, because he's not breathing well. I called the airline and got him a wheelchair for when he goes to the airport to go home. They'll come out and get him in a wheelchair because he's like having a lot of trouble breathing, and walking through an airport is going to be a problem. So
Yeah.
these are things that travel agents do for you, and thoughts that you need to think about before you go traveling in other countries. It is not America. It's not the same. Your
Yeah.
insurance isn't going to work in a lot of places, and you're going to be dealing with the challenges of people speaking other languages. So when we were in the hospital in Barcelona, the nurse didn't speak English. We were
Yeah.
Google translating my husband's medical history. And so,
Yeah.
you have to think about these things and be prepared for it. And, so I think planning is key, but also making sure you have things in place in case things go wrong, and expecting things could go wrong, and being, uh, agile enough to navigate that and understand that things are going to be different, and there are different cultures that you're dealing with.
Yeah, no, I know when we were talking, that was something I really wanted you to hit home, just because I think it's important for, you know, people to think about, no matter what age they are, just to plan. I mean, things do go wrong, whether it's to that extent or whether it's something minor, but just even going to the hotel desk and going, if it isn't an emergency room visit, but they say, hey, that we can have a doctor come, like that's a great tip that most people don't know about. I think it'd be good too, just like because people are probably wondering like how much does that cost? Because a lot of listeners, some may be in their 20s, 30s, and a lot of the times they may say, oh, I don't need that, I'm healthy. But if they are planning, like, what would you say? I know you mentioned, the 100,000, 10,000, and those numbers, but from a cost perspective up front, and then also, do you have to book that when you book your flight, your hotels? Like, what does that process look like?
Mhm.
And then the third part of that question would be, you know, when lose my train of thought here. um, geez. Uh, you can answer those two.
Sure, sure. And then
I'm
you'll think
sure
of
it'll
the,
come
it'll
back
come
to
to
me.
you. I
Yeah.
know. So the good news for young people is that travel insurance will be a lot cheaper for them.
Mhm.
It's based on your age, the amount of the cost of the trip, and so age and cost of trip and duration of trip.
Mhm.
So if you're going for 2 weeks and you're 20 something years old, chances are, and I'm not going to throw out any hard numbers here,
Mhm.
but you'll probably pay a couple $100 for a policy. And you do need to, if you do have pre-existing conditions, you need to book that travel insurance within 7 days of your initial deposit. So whenever you bought that airfare, whenever you booked that hotel, the first thing you booked, you have to do it within 7 days. If you
Okay.
don't have pre-existing conditions, you can wait a while. You can book it much later on if you want, if you decide to do it later. Cruise ships, tour companies, they will offer insurance. The airlines offer insurance for your, you can buy it when you book your flight. I would say don't do that probably. Because I'd rather get travel insurance and get everything because it covers trip interruption, trip cancellation, medical issues. If someone passes away in your close family and you can't go, do that. I also, like I said, I recommend doing a lot of free cancellation rates,
Mhm.
because that's a lot easier to cancel than going through trying to get reimbursement from a travel insurance
Yeah.
company. So a lot easier to do that. You can lower the cost of your travel insurance policy if you have those free cancellations, so that you don't have to cover all the costs. But generally the airfare you want to cover. But if the airline gives you a travel voucher for your cancellation, then you cannot get a reimbursement through the travel insurance. So these are things to think about. This is a travel agent will navigate you through what you need for your particular situation. But I think for younger people, it's a lot less. For older people, it can get pretty pricey.
Yeah.
Once you get over 60 years old, the price just shoots right up. And uh, so take advantage of it while you're young and travel when you're young.
Exactly. There we go. So
Yeah,
just
do it while you're young and able. I mean, that's what my father always told me. He said, he regretted that he didn't do it when he was younger. And that's why my husband and I started traveling when we were in our early 30s. And, we've been traveling ever since. And, we've gotten around doing that. So
yeah.
anyway, did you think of
No.
your other question?
Yes, I want to, so I don't forget what I was going to say. I know what I was going to ask right after you started talking, but I was going to say I couldn't agree with you more. I think and that's one of the reasons, right? I started this whole podcast where I started my company is people need to start traveling earlier. Similar to you, like my parents, we started traveling, we were really young, just doing like ski trips and everything, and just going around. But, we went to the Bahamas one year in high school, and then I got to study abroad in Ireland and absolutely loved it. And then just started doing snowboarding trips, got hooked on that, went to Europe. And it was just like those things you gain so much. It isn't just about going to see the sights. It's all the different things you learn from that, whether it's, oh my gosh, you go over there and you eat and the food is amazing and it's not processed. And it's just like those things that teach you so many different lessons in life. But it's like, I started then doing that in my 20s, and the goal is to get people to start traveling more and more because it does have a huge impact. And like my
Mhm.
question I would ask people when I was in my 20s who were 50, 60, 70 was like, what were your biggest regrets? And it always came down to, I wish I traveled more, I wish I started investing earlier, and I wish I spent more time with my kids. And
Oh
two out of
boy.
the three, I made sure to start doing when I was 23. Don't have kids yet, but trying to set myself up for if that does happen, right, I'm there to be able to kind of have a schedule to do that. But I think that's like being able to have people understand like it's much more than going to see this site. It has such an impact on you. That's really the goal, is to give people memorable and life-changing experiences that a lot of my friends have had. And they've come and said, I would have never gone to Croatia because I've never gone west of Ohio, from North Carolina if it wasn't for going with you. So it's like those type of things,
Yeah,
be
yeah.
excited. But the question I was going to ask is
Okay.
what's the company like what company from a travel insurance do you usually work with for your clients, or are there a couple if it's not with me?
Well, I love Travel Insured International. So I've dealt with a bunch of different travel insurance companies. I won't name the ones that I had trouble with. I don't want to, badmouth them or anything like that. But there are a few companies that were really a challenge to get reimbursement out of and hard to work with. But I have to say, Travel Insured International has been great. All of my clients that have had to put in claims with them have had very, easy, expeditious service and have gotten reimbursed, including myself for my husband in that Barcelona trip. I had that reimbursement within a couple weeks, which is amazing, and no fighting about it, so I love them and they're great. I love your three things that people wish they had done. I'll just add another thing to it. If you love to travel and you can swing it, try to get a job where you get that travel. So for 5 years, I mean, I always traveled all around the state of New Jersey because I did business development. But then I worked in international trade and I got to travel a lot of places for free. Now, granted, I had to work when I was there,
Yeah.
which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
And, I spent years going to Italy a couple times a year for work and being like, okay, I just walked by, um, the Piazza Navona on my way to the thing just to go to a meeting, and I walked
Yeah.
over, in Florence by the cathedral, the Maria Novella, and and you're like, oh, I wish I could stop in there and see it, but I got to go to a meeting.
Yeah.
But you do get to tack things on either end. So every time I traveled with work, I would tack on a few days on either side and I would go do things. So that's a great way to save back to the saving money.
Yes. Yes.
Let
Great.
your
No.
let your work pay for it.
That's a great point. I used to travel. I don't travel as much now, but when I was in, selling ultrasound and had a bigger territory, I mean, I was in DC and I actually would come down to Charlotte and I had a ton of friends down here. So I would be like, okay, I'm going to plan meetings around Thursday, Friday so I can pay for my
Oh, nice.
flight to then go back. I would then stay with them or get a hotel. But those were ways we had there were like conferences in Park City, so I'd extend those, go
Hmm.
snowboarding. I just got back last week. We had one in Palm Springs. It was a conference. So
Nice, nice.
stayed at an awesome JW Marriott, and then I decided just to take a personal day and go drive around Joshua Tree, and then had a meeting in Santa Monica, saw some friends, and flew back. So it's like pairing those little things, like, but thinking about those things, like if you're going somewhere, extending that. And usually, I had a buddy on who he traveled all over Latin America, all over the world for work, and he was like, usually, like people aren't going to care because you're there for work. And if you're like, hey, I'm getting down there, I have meetings Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, can I fly home Sunday
Hmm.
or Monday? Usually, if you're taking off a day, take it off, but they're not, unless the rate is, unless you're flying over Thanksgiving or Christmas, usually they're
Well,
they're
they expect you to do
yeah,
that, I think.
yeah,
Work expects you to do that, and that makes you a better rounded person for them, and it helps you build relationships in those
yes,
places that you're working. And it's interesting when you work somewhere that's, you know, like Europe, and when
yeah,
you're working there, you get to meet a whole other level of people that you wouldn't just being a
mhm,
tourist,
yeah,
and it gives a lot of depth to the country. And I think it makes you love it even more.
yeah, yeah. You learn more about it. See, I haven't had that's good insights. I haven't had the gotten that experience yet. So hopefully that
Yeah.
that comes with this. But would love to. I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but I guess just want to hear, are there some common mistakes that you see some of your, beginners make when they're traveling, as well as when you're going abroad? Any essential items that you always recommend, besides travel insurance, people bring?
Yeah, I think, well, one thing I would say is when you're booking, if you decide you're not going to use a travel agent, which by the way, travel agents for the most part don't cost you any money. They get paid through commissions by the hotels and and the tour companies and the cruise companies. So very rarely will it cost you money to use a travel agent. But I would say that if you decide to book things on your own, try to be careful of the cheap websites where it's like deal, deal, deal. And I'm not going to name them because I don't want to badmouth them either, but like cheap, cheap, cheap. And you're like, wow, what a deal. And you've booked it through a third party. You've booked a hotel through a third party, or you've booked air through a third party. Um, you know, just remember that when you don't book directly with them, you will, when something goes wrong, they're not there for you.
Yep.
They are not there, and neither is the hotel you booked because they don't like that you booked with them either.
Yeah.
So they're not going to help you. And you can get a lot of perks from hotels if you're booked directly with them. So if you want to get that upgrade on that room, or you want to, you want a little perk, or you want them to help you, do yourself a favor. If you find the hotel on one of those sites, great. But go to go to the hotel website and book it directly with them. I do the same thing with airfare. I don't book airfare. I wouldn't book it through third parties. I would book it direct. I'd find it on those third party websites, but I'd book it directly with the airline because if something goes wrong, the airline will not help you either.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing on the booking side. I think on the other side, it's using ATMs in other countries that are not bank ATMs. Make sure if you're going to get money, ATMs are the best way to get the money. It's the best exchange rate. It's the cheapest way to get it. However, do not go to Euronet, BankNet, the little standalone ATMs that are everywhere, foreign exchange ATMs. Don't do that because you're gonna end up getting having some pretty stiff charges for their service. Go to a bank ATM. Make sure it's actually at a bank and it's an ATM at the bank branch,
Yeah.
and get your money there because if you need money, I usually when I'm over in Europe, I hit an ATM there for some euros and I bring it back with me and save it for the next trip. So I always have my little international stash in my safe at home of different currencies from different countries so that if I go, I just grab it because if you get it through your bank at home, you can order it online. It's pretty easy to do, but you'll probably get charged a little more than you would if you got it at the ATM in Europe.
Yeah.
So those are a couple, just, small things. Pack light, that's another one. I see people, actually, we were just in Budapest. We went from Budapest to Berlin and we took trains and we were on a river cruise. We were on trains. We were in taxis, and the people that went with us, I told them pack light. I always tell people pack light, and they didn't. And
Yeah.
so here they were with two large checked bags each because we were gone for a while. We were gone over 2 weeks, and they're trying to get them up and down out of trains and trying to find a taxi that can fit everybody's bags in them. That's a challenge that you don't want to deal with if you don't have to. There
Yeah.
are laundry facilities. If you're on a cruise ship, a lot of cruise ships have laundry facilities. But if you're in a hotel, the hotels sometimes do it for you, but actually there are services now. There's a laundry service. If you just Google laundry service Rome, you'll find like 5 different people that'll do your laundry, and they pick it up in the morning and bring it back by the night for you. And so you don't have to bring a lot of clothes. You
Yeah.
can pack a carry-on and wash your clothes.
Yes. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, all those are very good tips. I think the biggest one is packing. I mean, yeah, the booking through different third party sites. I've done that before, but I completely agree. Booking straight with the flights is very important, and hotels too. I mean, if you want upgrades, I already have an email template that I use to reach out just based on there's a couple different angles for, if you're booking with points, if you're a loyalty member, if you're going on your honeymoon, if you have that hotel credit card, usually the more leverage and leeway that you have, usually they're going to say, yeah, absolutely. You love our brand. We'll give you an upgrade if they have one available. So I think that's important. And then Yes, laundry, Airbnb. If you do Airbnb, like going back to what you said about amenities, check and see, do they have a washer and dryer? And then even messaging your host. But the hotels, yeah, you can do that. And there's laundry services. And I'll save the best thing for last. If you're using Google, you can use Google. Also, there's a new tool that I haven't used Google probably in 2 to 3 months. It's called Perplexity AI, and it is Google on steroids. Check it
Wow.
out. Yeah, and definitely for the listeners, check it out because it saves you hours of time and lots.
It's funny because when Chat GPT came out, I started using that regularly because it helped narrow things down for me. It wasn't like the be all and end all,
Yeah.
but it narrowed it down enough that it would save me 15, 20 minutes of work just in a
Oh,
second.
yeah. I can geek out about that. I build out custom GPTs for everything and can get in the weeds.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Margie, I appreciate you coming on. This was awesome. I think a lot of people are going to take a lot of value from it. And for listeners, I know I had a couple people reaching out just asking, "Hey, do you have a trusted travel agent we're trying to book here?" Feel free to reach out to Margie. I will, share and if you don't mind sharing
Not at
your
all. Not at all.
email and then your company name. I think that'll be helpful. And then if people reach out, I can connect them with you.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help and thank you so much for having me on. And this was fun talking about my favorite subject in the world. And just everybody be safe, pay attention to where you are and your surroundings when you're traveling and respect other people's cultures. Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
those are my parting words.
No, those are great parting words. I'm looking forward. Hopefully, I'll tell Lorene that we need to do a panel on travel at her,
Yeah, yeah.
and we're looking forward to seeing you guys down in Key West. It'll be a good time.
Oh my God, yeah, I'm so looking forward to that. It'd be great. So good to talk to you. Take care,
All right.
Ross.
You too. All right.
I'll see you
See ya.
later. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give us a rating and review so we can reach more people who are trying to travel. Also, make sure you give us a follow and hit the subscribe button. That way, you're not missing out on any of the upcoming episodes that come out every Wednesday. If you want to sign up for any of the exclusive credit card sign up bonuses that we mentioned, we'll link those within the show notes. And then that way you can get started on your points and miles travel hacking journey quicker. Tune in to next week's episode. Peace.